Alright, well, I'm not sure how long we were offline there. Hopefully, not too much, but we should be good now. It looked like... So, ZBrush crashed on me. Not only that, but also my streaming software crashed on me. But it looks like we are good now. If there's anybody in the chat, shout out something, say something in chat. Let me know if you can hear me or not. And we will get back into it. I'm really not sure what happened there. Like, kind of everything just stopped working at once. I'm gonna check my task manager. Beckert and Louie. Alright, you guys can hear me? Awesome. Like I said, I don't know what happened there. I'm glad that ZBrush actually crashed on me. ZBrush completely locked up. I don't know if you guys saw that or not. Thank you for the follow. Jasmine, thank you for the follow. I got your email, both of them, by the way, and we will be looking at your stuff. You might be next in the list, I'm not sure. But I'm not sure if you guys saw that ZBrush crashed, but it completely locked up, completely froze on me. I'll very quickly, just because I'm not sure how much was missed in that last little stint there. So I'll just very quickly go over the critique once again here. This is sent in by Lasse. Lasse did not give anything, any specific notes on what they wanted me to look at, so I just gave kind of a quick general overview. The two major notes that I gave are making sure that you're paying attention, and this is great for everybody, I think, to focus on. Pay attention to your silhouette. Make sure that you don't have unnecessary breaks in that silhouette. When you are combining multiple objects and polygroups, make sure that those are blending together, nice and clean. Make it feel like one object, not quite so robotic. And then as you rotate around into that 3/4 view, your profile, your back view, make sure that all these shapes are still feeling the same. You still want it to read as the same shape as that occurs. So for instance here, we have this huge volume sticking out here that feels very awkward, so let's carry that shape first all the way down into the knee, but then also up through here we just, we need a decent amount of blending to make that not feel so strong. And now already with just, a few strokes here, we're starting to get that shape flowing up into that portion of the torso a lot better than what we had here. We end up getting what are called kind of like polygon islands, essentially, where the shape feels like it's kind of just stuck on there. And then the other big thing is to make sure that you're rotating around in 3D, looking at your object, and making it feel, good from all angles. If we look at a cross-section of the leg here, it feels very squashed. We just want to make sure that we're paying attention to that kind of stuff, because from one angle, you might be able to see that something feels wrong or off, and you can't really put your tongue on it, or put your finger on it. I don't know why you would put your tongue on it. But put your finger on it. So make sure you're looking at those extreme angles. Ooh, this feels very flat, very squashed. Let's, very quickly get some more volume in here. Voila, beautiful. We're good to go. All right. So those are the quick notes that I wanted to give on here. Like I said, but you maybe didn't hear, there are some good things going on in here. I do like the cool stylized proportions that we have going on. I think with just a little bit of TLC, cleanup, and love, yeah, I think this can go places. This can go real far. All right, let us go. Let us move on to the next one here. The next one is by Jasmine. Yes, Jasmine is next in the list. Jasmine actually just shot us a follow, I believe. Let's go ahead and, so real quick here, Jasmine, you sent me another email just a short bit ago before I started with an updated version of your clothing, and it looked like a shoe, I believe. Jasmine has a few questions about how they should tackle detailing clothing. They have a base mesh that they extracted the clothing from, but then deleted it because they were unhappy with it and wanted to start over. So all you should see is the clothing. My main concerns are stitches, pleats, the dress pocket, and the details in the jeans. Let's go ahead and open this bad monster girl right on up here. And we should only have the clothing. It looks like you do now have a body in here, but we'll kind of focus on the clothing since that's what you were asking about. Continuing on, I got some seams, piping. ZBrush quickly on the seams. Along the seam. Do you think stitches and piping are even necessary since they're not obvious in the original design, which we can go ahead and import here as well. Maybe. Wow. Really, really chugging today. Make sure we're not doing anything crazy in our task manager. It doesn't look like it. Let's resize our window there. Make sure the stream's still going live here after that. Alright, so we got our reference image. I do recognize this art style. Not off the top of my head, I can't think of who this is. But maybe you mentioned in your email. Wait, what do we got down here? We got a pat. A pat. Off the top of my head, I don't know. Let's grab our email back here. So do I think stitches and piping are necessary since they're not obvious in the original design? Necessary is an interesting way to phrase that. I would say that I would leave that up to your discretion. If you want to add in stitches and all that yummy good stuff, it looks like maybe you have added in some of this kind of what you referred to as piping. I think that's fine just because I can see some of this kind of additional form on the dress. And in general, I try to avoid adding anything that I cannot see in the concept. So on certain characters, I often see people start to over-exaggerate certain aspects of the character even though it's not in the design. I would say that stitches might fall into that category, but then I would leave that up to your best judgment so you can kind of decide. In terms of this information here though, I think you could probably clean these up pretty easily just because they start to get squashed and deformed through here. I would guess that is because you added this in and then you were maybe working on moving some stuff around together and it ended up getting messed up. But based on what you've done here, from what I can tell in your abilities, it seems like you would be able to handle that pretty easily. I would probably just, dynamically smooth this and look at it with like a move back face masking brush just to make sure that I can kind of see that, and maybe make sure that we're not getting, a ton of super unnecessary curves. So maybe like that dip in there is fine, but then we want this to kind of follow the line of that a little bit better. So we're not getting such a complex curve wrapping around just that armpit area. So I would say those would be the couple things that I would focus on for just the kind of piping information that you got there. And then let's see. Never had problems with Z, just tore your hair out today with 3ds Max? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little glitches, bumps, and bugs in ZBrush, but we will get through it together. All 3D applications have that kind of stuff though. And let me make sure in your newest email. Let's see here. So you tried using your live Boolean method for creating seams. Oh, the seam brush, yes. Unfortunately, when you projected the seams onto the low poly model, they didn't look clean. It's probably a problem with your resolution of your geometry. On your lowest res subdivision level, I would recommend putting in, so for instance, it looks like you maybe have a little bit of this going on. You got some creases in here that I would say are probably unnecessary and unwanted for something like this. But you also ask about pleats, so we'll maybe handle that all together. But in general, for your low poly geometry, on the lowest resolution subdivision, if you put in more edge loops, kind of like what you have right now in that area, you'll be able to much better project that information from the high res onto the subdivided low res version. Just because when that is subdivided up, it'll be more dense in that area where you want the seam to be, as opposed to where you have less dense topology on the lowest subdivision level. So maybe just put in a few more edge loops around that area. I'm not sure if you were trying to put a seam around here specifically, but maybe that's something that you can look at doing for something like the pants. Also interested in learning how to make a dress look pleated. Okay, we can look at that very quickly. Let's see here. Let's just create a new tool, and I'll do this kind of from scratch. So what I do when I'm trying to create pleats, let's see, I try to get it working in the absolute lowest subdivision level. So these are pretty minor, so I actually might not even do this. If we look at your dress, there's really not like a ton, it's not super strong here. So honestly, I would probably just, are these are connected, okay. I would probably just mask off the areas that you want to work on, and you might need denser topology in some of these areas. And you might also want to work on a single-sided polygonal mesh as well. That makes this a little bit easier. And just really, really kind of work on pushing in these areas so that when you step back up, you can start getting a little bit of a nicer blend between those. The reason I recommend getting rid of the thickness of this geometry is because you'll often run into a situation in which you have these polygons poking through to the other side and causing lots of geometry that's just like weaving in and out of itself, and that's never fun. We don't like to see that. But in terms of TT Cube, what's going on? Greetings. But in terms of actual pleats, I would probably just very quickly, let's get some vertical edge loops in here very fast. It doesn't have to be anything super clean. Where's my transpose? Or we'll do here. I'm just getting some topology in this. It doesn't have to be anything specific right now. But what I would try to focus on, again, or you know what, here, I'll even make this single-sided, which I think makes this a little bit easier. So we have a polygonal plane here that I'm working off of. My snap is being very strange. So for pleats, if you know, like I said, we already kind of looked at the reference here. But grab a good reference, something that you want to work from. We'll say something like this. It looks like, you know, from what I can find, depending on the material and just the size of the pleat, it typically results in a slightly different shape. But essentially, we just want the form to follow exactly what we see happening in here at that, again, the lowest resolution topology. So the way that I like to do this to make this quite a bit easier on myself is to just use masking. I find that to be pretty easy to work with. So we can mask off, you know, a few different halves here, and then if you just want to move in your geometry and kind of tuck it up under one side and start to smooth that out, you can already start to see how this is heading in the direction that we want it to for a pleat. After that, it's just a matter of kind of cleaning up the form more and more and getting it a little bit closer to the specific shape and proportions that you want. So in this example, we can maybe kind of bring these vertices a little bit further out and bring these a little bit further out and then smooth that, and then you can, I think, start to see how this begins to go in the correct direction. And then you might want, you know, a little bit more kind of topology connecting up here, or you might want to make the pleat a little tighter towards the top and a little bit more loose towards the bottom, just because that's typically what we see. Maybe something a little bit more tight into something a little bit more loose, so you can extend that, tighten up that area, and work on, like I said, just working on the proportions of that. But I think masking is a really good way to start getting headed in the right direction, and I will leave the rest up to you for that. But let's make sure we got a few more things here in the email. Can't tell if the dress is flowy or pleated. It looks like it's just kind of a little bit flowy here, like I said. You could maybe use the same technique that I just showed off here to do something similar. That might help you get headed at least in the right direction, and then up towards the top where the pleating would happen, you could maybe just make that blend out into the flat of the dress so that it flows a little bit nicer. And then you could add, you know, some asim, some non-uniformity to the rest of the shape so that they don't all feel exactly the same. For the jeans, should you worry about sculpting details that won't be seen? Although the dress is long and covers most of your jeans, it feels wrong to leave them as they are. They feel unfinished. Well, that, again, kind of comes up to your discretion. What do you got right now? So you don't have details up here. It kind of depends what this is going to be used for. I would also just comment on your jeans in general. The form here is much too complex. I mentioned earlier that about like the stitching and stuff. It's often the case that people sculpt more than what is actually in the original concept. So if your goal is accuracy, I would say you don't need this much information down here. You just want to stick to that original shape. Pay really close attention to this silhouette. We got a big fold here, a little bit of a flat here, a wrap around of another fold there, and then that tight area for where that folds in as it flips down onto the shoe. So really pay attention to the shape there. It looks like maybe you've started to push this in that direction, but in all honesty, I would probably knock this back. For me to just make sure that I'm doing this correctly, I would knock this back pretty far and start to reshape and pull out and match that silhouette first, and then start to focus in on those folds. So just the complexity that you have here is unnecessary for what I'm seeing, but also if these are supposed to be jeans, this doesn't really feel like folds that would be apparent on jeans. I think you got some cool folds going on for sure. Not poo-pooing your folds. You got some awesome folds going on. I would just say that it's unnecessary and it doesn't feel like the character. In terms of the detail, again, to go back to that, I'll leave that up to you in terms of what you want to do. But at the same time, if this is something for just a 3D figure that you're going to render and that's all, and it's never going to be seen like you said, if it's never, ever, ever going to be seen, don't waste your time. That would be my point of view. Second subtool is the shoe. I have not imported the shoe yet. We can take a look at the shoe next, though. Kids Velcro shoe. Oh boy. For these, I would just appreciate any tips on how to further refine them. Absolutely. Let's take a look at what you got. These are looking actually pretty nice. I like these a lot. I would say that the only thing that starts to immediately stand out here are some of these two kind of green polygrouped geometry that you have on the front and back of the shoe. They start to feel pretty pretty awkward towards those edges, especially on the bottom here on the front, just the way that's wrapping around there. So what I would maybe do is try to clean up this bottom edge and kind of, I don't know, there's probably, you could probably like clip curve these, or, I mean, there's a million ways to do it. You could do it with like booleans, you could just manually push and pull that topology around. Monster Go Art, thank you for the follow, appreciate it, and welcome to the stream. But in terms of the modeling stuff that you have going on up here, these look really nice. I like these a lot. It's unfortunate that so little of them are seen. I think you got some cool stuff going on here. It looks like maybe the shape is a little bit different for what's on top of the tip of the shoe there in terms of accuracy. But I think what you do have going on here is really nice. The only other thing I would say is just kind of pay attention to any time you would do any kind of piping, much like what you did on the dress. Make sure you're just keeping those nice and clean and even. So if this was like an actual product, if this was an actual shoe, this line would be just a little bit more clean, a little bit more even throughout. We see we start to get like a little kind of wavy and warbly back through here, so maybe just take some time to make sure that you clean that up, get that really nice and even. And if you need kind of an easy way to do that, a really nice way that I like to do is come through with my Z modeler brush and delete edge loops. And that just kind of simplifies the amount of information between each of these steps, and it becomes a lot easier to clean up and work with these shapes. So that's what I would recommend for your shoe. But other than that, looks good. Good job. All right. Who do we got next? Who do we got next on the list? For those that are just joining us, we are doing live critiques today on stream. Welcome all, welcome all. If you are wanting to get in on the live stream either today or next Friday at noon EST, we're doing the exact same thing. You can shoot me an email, follygon@gmail.com. If you need the instructions, just type in !critique into chat. All right, so next up we got Harris and a Foggy Contact, Rodesqua. Thank you for the raid with 61 people. Holy poop, dude. What is going on? What's going on here, everybody? Everybody, welcome. Welcome if this is your first time. I am Follygon, or you can call me Ben. Either or, it doesn't really matter. We are doing live critiques on stream today. If you guys want to get something in, just type in !critique into chat, and you can get in. If you guys don't know who I am, again, I'm Follygon. I do a lot of stylized stuff. We can very quickly art station it up. This is my last dude here, Android 17. Little look-see, original concept art, of course, by GopGap. If you've never heard of GopGap, of course, go give GopGap a follow on ArtStation. And yeah, Rodesqua, what's going on, dude? Thank you for the raid. Crits, that's right. Time to do some crits. It's Friday. Every Friday at noon EST, we do some critiques here on stream. And my stream has frozen on my end. Sandu, thank you for the follow, I appreciate it. I'm doing awesome, thank you for asking, man. Punaru, what's going on? And Lukey Bear, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it greatly. Alright, we are just now moving on to the next critique. So you guys hopped in at a good time. Good timing, Rodesqua. Or Danny, I should say. So there are the instructions for the critique if you guys want to hop in here. But we are going to go ahead and move on to the next one, which is from, let me check here, Harris. And I can go ahead and import our next Z tool. And we also have a reference image that I will download, that I did not download earlier. And we will load that in to our spotlight here in ZBrush. So, Pepper's model sheet by David Revoy. Everybody go check out David Revoy if you have not checked out David's work before. So here's our reference. that Harris is working off of. We got a nice model sheet here. This is very nice. It's very rare that you get a front, profile, and 3/4 view. And let's take a look at what we got. It looks like the material is, for some reason, there's a flat shader on the face. So I'm just going to turn off the poly paint. Harris, you can let me know if there's a specific material that you had on there that maybe we can find a substitute for. And we can critique this from here and see what we can do. Let me also read the email, make sure we didn't miss anything. Here is my subtool for live critique episode. If you have time to give me some advice on how to do these types of eyes, like anime, because you don't see her eyelids on the reference art, or very little. Here is the reference and Z tool. Best regards, streams are great, keep it up, good work. Well, thank you, man, I appreciate that greatly. Let's see if we can help you out and work on some eyes here. Tim says, love David's work. I don't believe I've ever seen David's work. David Ravoy. Again, everybody go check him out. I will have to check him out after the stream here. Vetlocks, what's going on? Welcome to the stream, as well as everybody else that is joining us. Again, Rodesqua, thank you for the raid. I appreciate it greatly. We will now move on with our head here. I think I'm going to just... it looks like things are polygrouped pretty well, and maybe not. I'll just run in auto groups just to make sure that we are heading in the right direction. I'm going to grab just our face and do a little bit of splitting here. So we got our head. What do we got here? We got... okay, I see what's going on. Alright. So we got our eyes, and kind of the first thing that really stood out to me here, you specifically asked about the eyes, which we will absolutely look at, but I think you just have some proportional changes that we can make really quick to help get this headed in the right direction. So with a model sheet, what's really awesome about this is that you can take something like this and overlay it over your image, turn down your opacity real low, maybe scale this up, and try to line up your 3D model. I typically like to use the eyes to line something like this up. So I think that's probably what has been done here. It looks like maybe there are just some small inaccuracies that I would try to focus on in terms of the position of some of the elements of the face and shape of those elements. So specifically the nose and mouth feel a little unappealing. I think there's some directionality that we could add here to the nose with this transitioning here, and with the lips in terms of the shape from the profile. I think there's maybe a little bit of work that could be done there as well. But let's get to our eyes and start looking at how we could maybe create some eyelids for these. So I think yeah, we'll just leave that there. That's fine. So from what I can tell, we got these big old, I'm going to turn off the hair. We got these big old eyelids wrapping around here. I'm not sure how you created these. You'll have to let me know. But it looks like we have just a piece of geometry, maybe that was extracted from the top and bottom portions there. And then, yeah, kind of gone from there. What I like to do for these kind of anime style faces, like you said, is I really try to just focus on the shape of the eye socket without the eyelid there at all. And then after I get to that point where I'm happy with that shape, especially for things that have like this really, for lack of better terms, kind of flat face, there's definitely some things here that you can do to your head in general. Let's see, we don't have symmetry on, that's not good. We'll do a quick mirror and weld. There are definitely some things that you can do to your head here in general that will help your eyes read better. Just because eyes don't work by themselves, you have to get all the shapes that are interacting and flowing into those working well as well. So maybe focus on that a little bit, and then also just work on the shape of your eyes without worrying about your eyelids, without worrying about your lashes, your brows, and all that good stuff. So I would line this up, continue doing that, it looks like there's just some shapes that we need to work on here. And I think this will take longer than what we have kind of just today for our quick critique. But I would try to really focus on a lot of these shapes here, cleaning them up without anything else on. Just kind of focus on your head, shape of your head, your eyes. Make sure you're not adding in anything that's not really in the concept. I'm not seeing a really large wing of the nose there, so that's stuff that, you know, just for example, stuff that you want to pay attention to. Just because we know that that exists in reality, it's not in the concept, so we don't need to add it in. Seems to be a little bit of the theme today. Then, after you get the shape of the eyes a lot closer here with this connection, this interaction just between the eyes and the face, I know we're not quite there yet, but I want to move forward just so we can see the process, because that's what you specifically asked about. At this point, then I would start to use something like a curved tube brush or my cube tube brush, which is available on my Gumroad for just $1. I use that for eyelashes, I use it for hair, I use it for eyelids. I mean, I use it for a lot of stuff. I use it for piping, clothing, seams, a lot. So yeah, I'll just use the curved tube snap brush since it's a default brush here in ZBrush. And at this point, I would start working on inserting that geometry in there and just keep this on top. Maybe you could come into your curve modifiers, activate size, and play around with trying to get like a little bit of some taper here towards the corners. I find that with anime style heads, a lot of the time, you kind of have like this double hit eyelid situation. Look at the eye, it's obviously rounded, but it feels very squared off. Utazkazz. Sure. Thank you for the follow, Utazkazz. I appreciate it, and welcome to the stream. So it's definitely very rounded, right? But it definitely has this kind of double hit kind of feeling to it. Kind of feels a little bit squared off. And it's a tough shape to get, I know. But yeah, I would just kind of play around with this for a while. So again, inserting that tube of geometry, splitting that off, just so you can kind of see the process here. And we'll just do the bottom, I think, for now, just so you can kind of get the idea. But then, let's add in, let's see here, close that off. Add in some subdivisions. I'll try to do this quick. I'll use something like maybe a move backface masking brush here, and just start to, you know, flow this into the face. Move backface masking, just kind of pulling that down and in. And after I get that to a place that I like, which it's not really there yet, especially the general shape of the eye not being there, but we're kind of focusing on just the process here. So after you get that to a place that you like, you've focused on maybe cleaning up your edge here a little bit more with some pinches. Pedrin Hole, thank you for the follow. So after you get that cleaned up, you spend a good amount of time on there, then I would take the time to take your head and your eyelids and then Dynamesh those together, or Boolean them together, however you want to go about doing this. This is a very small head as well. You might want to think about doing a deformation unify on this, on all of your geometry. Just because ZBrush's tools tend to work better at 2 units cubed, so you might run into some issues with some of your brushes not working the way you need them to, and Dynamesh not working the way you need them to. I'll just leave it down here for now, and hopefully Dynamesh doesn't completely break. It looks like we're going to have maybe a little bit of trouble getting some of this to work. So see how I have to crank this resolution up super, super high here? If you're at that 2 units cubed, this won't be quite an issue. But after you get that merged in, we might want to go even a little bit higher. I'll just crank it up to 4K because that's as high as we can go. After you do that, then at that point, that's when you would start working on blending and transitioning this geometry together. I know that was kind of a lot really quick, but if you want to see this process a little bit more explained in detail, a little bit slower, I have a ton of videos of me creating eyelids and eyelashes and eyes on my YouTube channel, and then I also do it here on my stream all the time, so you can feel free to jump in and ask questions whenever you have the opportunity. So again, just taking some time to blend that in, use your kind of best judgment looking at your concept. It looks like it's a little bit more flat. Chirino, thank you for the follow, appreciate it. But what I would focus on mostly is making sure that you're not getting super dug in here, just because those anime faces, right? There's a lot of stuff that's going on here, but these are pretty flat. The deeper you make that, the more age it's going to add to the character, and this is definitely a pretty young character, so we would want to focus on really just making sure that that is nice and clean and blended well. Now there's a ton of other ways that you could go about doing something like this. This is just one method. This is a method that I like to use. The reason I use it is because it gives you more control over your eyelid. It's a separate piece of geometry. You can split it off, work with its resolution, etc. So that's how I would go about doing that. Other than that, in just general critique terms, a few of the things that I pointed out for those that are just jumping in here for Harris's model here is just making sure that you're trying to retain some of these shapes as you rotate around. It starts to lose a lot of this volume, especially in the cheek. If we're looking at this 3/4 view, see how much volume we're getting there in the cheek, so I'd probably take some time to really build that up. Maybe look at that back view as well, but just starting to get some volume in there with just a couple strokes here with my clay tubes. Already starts to make that silhouette feel like it's pushing more in the right direction. And then I would also focus for your eyes specifically. I know these eyes tend to be really flat, but I think you could probably push the depth here quite a bit more. And the shape obviously isn't exactly where we want it, but again, try to focus on these points in kind of like the square shape here where this transitions. So for instance, as we come up, is my map? Oh, it is. It is. I did not know that was a thing. All right, awesome. So as this kind of comes up here, we got these like major kind of hit points right here. Try to focus on those 4 corners, and obviously, you know, the corners of the eyes here and here. I think that'll help you to kind of focus on that, get your mind in the right place, and go from there. Froniel, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. But those are the few things that I would do. And yeah, that pronunciation. Yeah, I'm kind of a great at pronouncing names. Tatami, welcome back, man. How you doing? And Ventilox, Luan, how you guys doing? Did you start private lessons? I actually stopped doing my critiques, my private critiques, just because I didn't have enough time for them. I was doing those for, I think I did them I started in September, October, November, and I did half of December. I'm not doing them right now because I'm working on a new large course. It's going to be coming out here soon, hopefully. Thank you very much for the help. We'll try to use this advice. Awesome. Fantastic. Glad to hear it, man. I know we broke a lot of stuff here, but hopefully we push this in the right direction, got your gears turning. We definitely have a few more critiques that have been added to our list here. We're going to try to get through as many as we can. If we don't look at them today on stream, do not worry. We will be looking at more live critiques next Friday at noon EST. So if we don't get through it today, next week. The next one here is by Brian, who says, I'd like to get some feedback on this piece. Did I get the likeness down correctly? Are the weak spots I need to improve on, etc.? What are the weak spots I need to improve on? All critiques are welcome. If it's okay, I've sent 2 models. One is with the finished piece UVs. Oh yes, I did look at this one. Brian. I remember this. Okay, this is a fun one. All right, let's open up Brian's model here. A lark snail. We got a fun little snail dude here. And I will also open up the reference image so that you guys can see, and also so I can take a look here at the likeness and how close we are. Let me just slide these off screen. Whoops. Alright, so we got a cute little snail. Another thing that I saw, so he's got another version of this character, and it has a little bit of toon shading going on. Brian, I don't know how you came up with this, but I opened this at first and I was like, what the heck? How did he do that? That's very clever. What Brian has done is very, very interesting. He's taken all his geometry, inflated it out, and then flipped the normals on it. So what we're actually looking at here is, if I turn off the poly paint, it's all that geometry and the normals. The geometry has essentially, the way to think of it, has been flipped inside out. So it looks like it's got some toon shading going on, which again is very clever. I will say, Brian, that there is actually a way to do that in rendering with a material, just to let you know. There are a few different ways to do that with materials, and then there are some, if you go into your rendering menu and look at your BPR filters, there are ways to do that for the post-processing as well. So that might be something to look into if you want to check that out. But very clever. I applaud you on that. I'd never seen anybody attempt to make a toon shader with actual geometry. Very, very nice. I'm going to delete him though for now, and we will look at your non-toon shaded version here. It is too cute. I agree. So the main question is about likeness, so just accuracy, and then are there some weak spots where they can improve? So let's take a look at what we got. I think I'm just going to turn off the poly paint and just kind of focus on the actual three-dimensional form here. I think the first thing that kind of sticks out is just the position of the body and face. Definitely, you know, more verticality to this. It looks like maybe his head is tilted a little bit more. I don't think that would be super difficult for you to change, but if you're, you know, going for accuracy, I'm definitely going to try to nitpick you a little bit here. Try not to put in extra, let's see, how's this done? Ooh, we got some subdivs. I always appreciate that too. Try not to put in any curves or straights where they're not actually applicable. So here on this antenna, is that what this is? Antenna, sure. This is a little bit more straight than what you have going on. So I have AccuCurve on, don't I? So I would take some time to, you know, make sure that the silhouette is just matching there a little bit more closely. It looks like, if anything, it's a lot straighter on this side and maybe a little bit curved on that outside edge as it wraps up towards the top. So maybe focus on that, and then make sure that that is also reading the same. Let me undo here. Make sure that that is reading the same from all angles, so it still feels like it's the same kind of shape here that we can see from this main view. I know it's tough when you only have one image to work from, and you kind of have to, I wouldn't say make up a lot of what you can't see. You do in some instances, but a lot of what that actually is just interpreting the shape and form that you see from one angle and being able to translate that and make sure that it feels like the same shape and form from every other angle. So where that kind of breaks down in a more obvious way, Blast Cut, thank you for the follow, appreciate it. Where that kind of breaks down in a little bit more of an obvious way is when you're working on a shape for a very long time, and you're sculpting on it, and you're like, oh yeah, the silhouette's exactly how I want it, it's perfect. And then you rotate around and you're like, crap, I forgot to, you know, it's so squashed, I forgot to like rotate around while I was working on this, forgot that, you know, I'm a 3D artist, you know, so try to rotate around a lot, make it feel like it's the same shape from every angle. That would be my my advice there. The face, it looks like the shell kind of dips down a little bit lower in here, so maybe some of that's like tucking in and hidden back here a little bit as well. This is great. I love this little shape you got going on here, but maybe make sure that that's not visible from the front there, from that kind of hero angle, we'll call it. So make sure that that's kind of hidden there. And then as we rotate around here, I think a lot of these shapes are really holding up as we rotate around. I think you've done a good job of that. I would probably just nitpick you a little bit more in terms of cleanliness in a lot of this geometry. I think you could probably push a lot of this a little bit further in terms of just some of the general kind of pock-markedness that I see on the surface. And it's not super hard to clean that up. You already have subdivision levels here, so it's really easy for you to go through and take some time to, pinch, define your planes a little bit better, and smooth some of that out. I am an extremely nitpicky person, though, when it comes to stylized stuff, and I try to make things as hyper clean as I possibly can. So, take that with a grain of salt. Another thing, I would say that the form here on the spiral, instead of, I like what you did with the poly paint. I think this is great. I think it's awesome when you can do some poly painting for shadows, so you can like hand paint in some darkened areas. But I think instead of doing that in this case, I think you could actually exaggerate the form here a little bit more on this shell. Whoops. Let's see if I can solo mode that. Just the shell. So I would try to, this, it's not very deep, so I would try to let the geometry to do a little bit more talking in this shadowed area. So come through with like a dam standard or another brush that you like, or maybe even a standard brush, and try to exaggerate some of this form. There's definitely a time and place for, getting in there and making sure that the poly paint is doing some of that work, but I think you could let the actual geometry do some of the talking with the shadows. I think that'll help some of this to read a little bit better. And then, from what I'm actually seeing here, just based on the way that this light is hitting, like up through here, it looks like, and I'm just going to do this really quick and rough, so excuse, all that stuff that I just said about I am a stickler for hyper clean sculpting. Just to show you an example, it looks like maybe there's a little bit of a plane change in here, so maybe you could work on getting some additional form in some of these areas. So it looks like maybe there's like a little bit of a build up there, but also like retaining that tight edge around that point. So I don't know, play around with that. It looks like maybe you could inflate this instead of keeping it so flat. I think that's more so what I'm seeing there than anything else. So maybe just work on rounding out some of this so it feels like it's actually, instead of just like drawn on really quick, it actually feels like the shell is a spiraled form. Make it feel like a cinnamon bun. Let's see. Francisco, welcome back, dude. You're like Pavlov's dog whenever you hear music like the one you play while streaming. I feel like practicing and watching your stream/videos. That's awesome, Big Kitten. I'm glad that I've Pavlov conditioned you to want to sculpt. That's hilarious. A very snaily snail. The snailiest snail. Let's see. Make sure I didn't miss anything else here. Setting a custom timeline for angles. Yeah, that's something I like to do a lot. You just go up into your movie palette and turn on your timeline, show, and then what you can do is line up your image, overlay that, get the like the scale right, and then you just click on your timeline, and then if you rotate and move it around, you can just click on that little red line and you get that right back where you had it. I love that. I use that all the time. Great little piece of advice there. I want to watch the stream, but I also want to watch JoJo. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That's a tough call. Personally, I would watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. There's another man of culture here, yes. All right, so let's check out. I think we'll move on to the next one here, but that's what I would look at in terms of accuracy and just kind of pushing it a little bit farther. push around on those few things, and I think this looks awesome. I love the character. I'm not familiar with the artist here, so if you're here watching, go ahead and give them a shout out in chat. I didn't see it in the email or anything. But yes, very cute concept, lots of fun. Let's check out our next email and see what we got here. All right, I believe the next one up is Louisa, who, yes. Louisa has sent us a couple things here. So I'll look at the probably more simple one first, which is a scooter cat. So if you guys hang out on my stream, then you probably know that every once in a while I'll give out like a quick little homework assignment, nothing crazy. But essentially, we were doing some mannequin sculpting, and Louisa has taken the time to do her homework. So we'll take a look at what we got here. So the homework essentially was, we were doing a bunch of mannequin sculpting. If you're not familiar with mannequins, essentially the idea is to just block out a character pretty quickly here in ZBrush. Let's see, mannequin, here's one. Here's one of the mannequins that I did during that process. So block out something, keep it as low poly as you possibly can to retain the form that you need, and just try to make something nice. And I said, you know, spend like a few hours on it. So for this, the objective was to really focus on those fundamentals. You know, you don't really need to detail the face or anything, but you know, a lot of these shapes are still reading well from a lot of different angles. So we got like that stylized big buff dude, right? And if you want to see the process for me sculpting these as well, there's a few more. It's all on my YouTube channel. Everything gets uploaded there that we do here on stream. So if we toggle off our arms, we can see that the shapes are still reading here. We got a nice flow in the silhouette, and it's got like this kind of jousting forward chest that he's pushing up and forward, and he's got like this very nice line of action flowing up through here. We're looking at some nice tapered shapes, all these things working together, and that is what the entire purpose of that homework assignment was. So focusing on the large shapes and trying to push things as close as we could to our concept, and this concept is amazing. I love this. I love this. The artist's name is K-Young Hwan Kim. For spelling, for those that want to check out this person, K-Young Hwan Kim. Check them out. I will have to check out all of these artists after we are done streaming here. Let me make sure that I didn't miss anything in chat before we move on. Louis, it's you. You all have some really cute models. You guys do. You guys do have some cute stuff going on. I love it. All right, so where to begin? I guess I should also read this email. To homework. These are the two of the homework that you gave us some time ago, doing the block out, spending at least a few hours on it. Would love it if you could take a look at them and see if the proportions and shapes are working. The first one, the Fit Elf, which we will look at second actually, because I'd like to spend a little bit more time on it. Mostly a study, and the second one, Scooter Cat, is a model I want to finish. So if you don't have the time to look at both, please check out the second one, which is not finished, but still like to know if it's looking okay. Well, it's definitely looking okay, but I think there's a few things here that we could push a little bit further. So let's take a look at, I really love and appreciate that you really kept this super low poly and you focused on these low forms. I love the frog on the head as well. Let's start with the scooter and just get rid of him completely. And take a look at this cute, adorable little cat. I love that you also really just focused on what's important and what's visible here. I think you've done a pretty good job here in the sleeve. I would say let's see here. Let's sleeve here. I would say that this form, just looking at how this is wrapping around, let me just, what scale are we at? I think we're good to do basic Dynamesh here. Looks like he's got a little basket backpack with a milk on, so that's covering up part of that there. I would say the main thing that really bothers me here is just maybe kind of pulling in on this back edge a little bit, and that shouldn't be too hard at all. Focus on that. There's definitely some roundness that we can see from this angle here, but kind of push that in a little, focus on that, and I think that looks pretty good. The scale of that hand is so tiny, probably even a little bit more small than the hands that you have here. I would also pay special attention to stuff like this in your silhouette as we're like wrapping around here. Make sure that this angle is feeling right, which it is, but as we start to get down here, just make sure that you're getting that hit in the proper place. And let's see, I'll just add in a quick subdiv to make sure that that's feeling like we got that weight properly there. And there might be some stuff here that you can do to like just define that elbow just a little bit, just a tiny bit, just to get that volume in there and pull that out. And I would just say, in general, make sure that these volumes are still feeling pretty good from all angles. So as we wrap around here, we want to make sure that this volume is not losing too much, or I'm sorry, the shape is not losing too much of its volume. We can kind of wrap around there. Make sure that we're not getting any unnecessary kind of hits or breaks in our surface that we don't want. And I know this is super low poly, but as you subdivide up and continue on that stuff, just make sure that that's something that you always have in the back of your head there. In terms of the body, it's a little tough there with the shirt, just the way that that is like twisting and being like an open hole there. So we can maybe look at that a little bit here. He's now scooterless. Yes, he's now a magical flying cat, except the only way he can fly is to make it look like he's riding a tiny little cat scooter. Yes, he's gonna save up his milk money to buy a new one. Do you want me to email the original concept artist for the snail or link it here in chat? Just shoot out a link in chat so that people can check them out. I would appreciate that greatly, and I'm sure they would as well. Bill says, is it too late to submit a file? Well, Bill, there's a little bit of a backlog, so we might not have enough time to get to your work today, but the earlier you send it in, you will definitely make it into next Friday's live critique. So the earlier you send that in, the earlier we will get to it. So definitely send it in now if you can. I would say for something like this, typically what I do for any piece of geometry that's just like a sleeve or anything that I know is going to be rounded, I'll typically not insert a sphere. Instead, just try to think about what that most primitive shape is going to be. It's just a very simple cylinder, right? So we can maybe, instead of using that, let me mirror that over so that the polygroups are the same. I would just use a cylinder instead and then slide that into place and then go from there, just so that you have the edges retaining a little bit better at that lower subdiv. Then you're gonna have to do less cleanup as you move forward. Oh, and our position's pretty terrible there, but that's okay. That's really easy to fix. Other than that, I would definitely look at these from the front view and make sure that the weight is feeling good, which right now it feels like it's flowing out a little bit where it should be like more directly down. You know, gravity is what's kind of pulling a decent amount of that form down. And yeah, other than that, I think that's starting to look a little bit better and get headed in the direction that we want. The body, I think this is good. I think you got some good stuff going on here. It feels like you maybe have a little bit too much volume in the back, a little bit too much junk in the kitty trunk. So I would probably reassess some of this, and it looks like just based on the 3/4 view. We're looking at, if we look at that sleeve hit, we can see that that is perfectly like in line with the back. So that line kind of flows into the sleeve there, and then the line also flows into the back and then around here. So that's something that you're gonna have to probably take quite a bit of time to kind of finagle with, and I think a lot of that is going to be a little bit of back and forth on not only the, not only working with the body / back of the character, but also this arm and sleeve, and getting this to kind of move back and line up a little bit better, so we can get that from this 3/4 angle feeling the same proportionally as what we see there. So play around with that as well. He's definitely got like some leaning forwardness, sure. So pay attention to that. You got that in there, it looks good. His head is maybe a little bit more pointed up, and where's that little nose there? I like doing stuff like this too. I'm just gonna merge this together right now though, really quick, just because I wanna work on this face quickly here. The angle of this face feels incorrect based on what I'm seeing in some of the shapes here, so I would play with that in the silhouette a little bit. And it doesn't really feel catty enough to me. So let's just kind of smooth some of this out. It's definitely hard without the eyes, but in terms of the main shape here, I'm just kind of looking at the silhouette as this wraps around. Could be a little bit more snub, a little bit more volume in the cheek, and a quick save. Let's make sure we didn't miss anything in chat here. Good thing the artist has other drawings of this cat. That is amazing. Again, that is K-Young Hwan Kim. You can check him out on ArtStation, it looks like. So go give him a look-sees. Adorable, adorable little kitty. And also some awesome, more kind of comic book realism styles. Let's make sure we didn't miss anything else here. Seagull might join the live crit when you have some time. No problem, man. Slavio F. Hell, welcome. Welcome to the stream. And Julie's art. And Beckert. Hey, guys. Hello, hello. I would also pay attention to that silhouette, the back of the head. So as that's wrapping around, it definitely feels a bit more flat back here. You're going to have to do some proportional shifting here, I think. Sliding to get this to feel a little bit more on top of the body, after we've kind of broken some things, but you got to break it to fix it, so it's inevitable. So yeah, working on some of those shapes. Probably, I would say insert just like a simple sphere, so that you can start at least getting the eye placement. I think that will help you a lot in figuring out the rest of the shapes going on in the face here proportionally. Let's see here. What else do I want to say about this face? Maybe just kind of pull some of that volume down there a little bit better, just kind of based on what I'm seeing here. And it looks like maybe the eye, like this brow line, is a little bit lower too. You'll have to play with this. It's definitely hard to tell with the eyes in there. The frog, I won't comment on the frog. He's adorable. He looks like a fun little character to sculpt up. For the ears, it looks like they're kind of flowing back a little bit in the wind on the scooter, from what I can tell. So maybe just play around with the angle here a little bit more, and get those kind of going in the right direction. I think there's a lot less curve than what you have here present, but maybe a little bit more roundness to the shape if we were to look at this from the top-down angle. So maybe work on that as well. I would also say, when you're kind of working on these little blockouts, what I find to be Dynamesh is great in those earlier stages, but once you start getting to a place where you feel comfortable with the shapes that you're defining, I would maybe start either doing some kind of low-res ZRemesh like what I just did there. You can go as low as you want. I'll do like 0.1 or 1 for a lot of these kinds of shapes. And that just helps to keep things a little bit more clean than Dynamesh, and you don't have to like really up-res your resolution super high. So you can just do a dynamic subdiv like what I've done here. If you don't know what dynamic subdivs are, for anybody that's a little bit newer to ZBrush, it's down here under Tool Geometry Dynamic Subdiv. You can toggle that on and off there, or you can toggle it on and off with D and Shift D. You don't want to use these with subdivision levels. You just want to use it kind of like a smooth modifier in Maya or something like that. But yeah, I think other than that, this is looking awesome. I love it. You got some good stuff going on here. Oh, I would one other thing. I think the shape of the tail, or the angle of the tail, is incorrect based on what I'm seeing here. I think the tail is a little bit more similar effect to what's going on with the ears, kind of like blown back just a little bit in the wind. So what I would do is maybe get that angled back a little bit further. It looks like it's kind of going back here and then like flipping up a little bit more towards the camera. So I would focus on that for a little bit. And again, one of those things, we showed off this technique earlier, but I like to come through, and if I have like something, here, delete edge loop complete. If I have a piece of geometry, it's like a long tube, I can simplify it by deleting some edge loops, just like this. And I'll keep those so it keeps its roundness. But this helps to clean up the curve and make it a lot easier to manipulate so that you can get a nice clean shape, and then it's also easier to mask off and do some quick little rotations. But I look forward to seeing what you do for this cute little kitten moving forward, and I look forward. I said forward a lot there. But I look forward to seeing what you do with this. But that's all I'll say for now, and maybe we'll see this little cute kitten in a future critique video. Name butchered, but it's fine. That's my whole job. I sculpt things and I butcher people's usernames. So, welcome to the club. You're one of many. Thanks so much. I'll try to finish all the blocking for next week's critiques. Well, no rush. Don't feel like you have to get it done in a week's time. But let's see what we got for our next critique. They're coming in like wildfire. I think the next one here, we just looked at, oh, I'm sorry, Louisa. I did want to really quick look at Louisa's other model, because it's by an artist that is near and dear to my heart and style. This is a model that you're basing off of a concept by Dylan Ekron. So let's import our reference image. If you guys don't follow Dylan, Dylan is an amazing 2D and 3D concept artist. You should absolutely go follow him. He's got a really nice course on sculpting stylized characters that I have participated in. Great stuff, great artist, great dude all around. And if Dylan, if you ever watch this at any point, you're trying a little hard here, man. Being a little bit of a little try hard with this elf, although I do like it a lot. So I would say I'll try to keep things really general here, because I think a lot of the critique that I gave in this is pretty similar to what I saw in your cat. Really focus in on that silhouette. Really try to simplify some of these forms. In specific instances like this, I think what is often very helpful is going over in something like Paint or Photoshop, whatever application you like to use, and do a little bit of a draw over and try to kind of pre-plan some of these shapes. So I like the splitting up that you've done here in the body, but I think it's gotten to an unnecessary stage. So we don't really see a lot of these extra polygon island hits. So like right here, we got this nice like little separation that we can see in the silhouette. If we go like all black here, we don't really want that. We want this to, in its most basic shape, most basic form, feel like it's still representing that character over there. So what I would do on something like this is make sure that you just take some time after you get in some of those initial shapes and try not to add anything that you don't see in the concept. This has been a little bit of kind of the through line for today's live critique, I would say. If it's not in the concept image and your goal is accuracy, don't put it in, you know? Take some time to, you know, really overlay your image if you want, if that's how you like to work, and go from there. But yeah, I would focus on getting that as close to that silhouette as you can before you move on. So maybe initially you can split up some geo and do some of that, but if it's not present, don't do it. That's really all I'll say about this. Most of the other notes are similar things that I pointed out, and I don't want to spend the amount of time it would require for me to match something like this. So post his link. Thank you, Louis, for posting Dylan Ekron's ArtStation link there. Let's look at the next one. Moving on. Really like the way you explain. Good. That is the whole point of today's critique, live critique session. Hopefully, even though we're not looking at, we won't have enough time probably to look at every single person's model, or models, hopefully the information is still useful and transferable. I will really quick before we move on here take some time to shout out, if you guys have never checked out my Gumroad before, there's a link down below if you've never checked out me. I put a lot more work. Thank you, Vileem, thank you for the follow, I appreciate it. If you guys have never checked out my stuff before, there's a link down below to my Gumroad, gumroad.com/Follygon. I have some stuff on here for people that are brand new to digital sculpting. It's a quick start course, get you up and running in ZBrush in a little over 2 hours. I have some more intermediate and advanced stuff as well, as some base meshes, brushes, materials, my custom UI, all sorts of goodies on here that I use professionally. So check it out, and my taskbar is gone, oh no. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next critique, which is by a model sent in by, let's see here. We just looked at Louisa's, so next up in the timeline is Daniil, I believe. Natalia. Can't put my tongue on it. Thank you. I was trying to say I can't put my finger on it, and it's on the tip of my tongue, and they somehow like merged into I can't put my tongue on it, so thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Let's go ahead and download this Z tool. Oh, no wait, it looks like we have a, I believe, let me see here. Ah, Danny, I know Danny from the ZBrush Discord. Awesome. Well, let me go ahead and, I'm not sure if I have a folder for you already, Danny, but let me just make a new one for you really quick. We're starting to get into some of the critiques that were sent in while we were streaming here. So let me make a new folder, and we can go ahead and open up our female character here. And here was the reference image, which I will also import. Come on, let's go. I should probably close ZBrush because we're getting a little a little cluttered here. So give me just a minute. I'm gonna turn off my quick save. I'm just gonna blast that up real high, and we can import Danny's reference image. Danny, if you don't mind sharing the link to the artist for this concept, for this image that you have here that you're using, I would greatly appreciate that, and I'm sure the artist would as well. Feel free to share a link in chat directly. All right, so just searching and learning to feel the form. Tried searching, it's a stock image, but no dice, no worries. If anybody ends up finding out, let us know. All right, so I think what is important here is we'll focus on only what is visible. So the first thing that really stuck out to me is some misproportions in the face, obviously, that we can take a look at. But also, I'm gonna run an auto groups on this just so we all have, let's see, split off this hat. That's fine. And I will grab these eyeballs. The eyes are the window to the soul. All right. So obviously some proportions in the face that are hard to see. I would say in general, don't use something like this for a reference. I think it's cool that you tried to, copy something like this and go for a little bit of accuracy in something a little bit more artsy. That's really cool. But in terms of at the stage where you are, I've talked to you before, Danny, about some of your other work, and I've seen some of your other works in progresses, and I think you've been on the critique stream before as well. I would say try to find some really well-lit references so that you can really focus on some of the things that we've already talked about in the kind of fundamental section, thinking about like silhouette, tapered shape, straights versus curves, making sure that your form is reading well from all angles as you start to rotate around. But other than that, we can like give a quick little rundown on some of the stuff here. I think in the hat, like just looking at the angle alone here, there's a little bit, it goes from like a straight into a curve. And this is stuff that I would say in general in not just like the brim of your hat, but in pretty much everything you guys should be looking for. This is stuff that I try to really focus on. So when I'm talking about looking at your shape and really trying to understand what's going on, this is the kind of stuff that I think people don't focus on well enough. So as we come down here, the brim of the hat, the shape goes, whoops, let's grab my transpose line. It's not perfectly straight. If I draw a straight line there, then it comes down, and then right at this point here, we have what's called a break or a hit. And thinking about breaks and hits are one of those fundamental things that we want to think about. It really helps you start to get in the mindset of thinking about your form a little bit more, and it will help you recognize these shapes a lot better. So think about hits and breaks. Think about where straights turn into curves, curves turn into straights, and if you have just a curve, think about where that apex of the curve is and try to match that in your reference. So the geometry here isn't super easy for me to manipulate just the way that we have this set up here. So I would just try to match that a little bit better, get that straight into that curve. And then some of these shapes are just, we could probably take some time to get the brim of the hat tipping down a little bit more like what we see in the reference. So again, kind of following that same theme, we don't want to add anything to our sculpts, our work, that is not in our reference. So we got like a little bit of a concavity, a big dip in this portion of the hat. Make sure that that is present in your reference if that's something that you're going to add here. I'll try to just very quickly kind of clay tubes fill this in and kind of break a lot of stuff and butcher it, but you guys get the idea, I think. So we'll kind of move on from here onto the face, and we will focus more so, I think, on the mouth. I would also say at this stage, try to focus a little bit more on sculptural form and a little bit less on poly paint. Let's switch our material maybe. I would say, I won't give too many notes here on the poly paint, but let's just focus on the mouth. I think that'll be a good use of our time. Mouth and maybe a little bit of like the tip of the nose, since that is what's visible in our reference image. This is very dark, it's very hard for me to see, but from what I can tell, it looks like the mouth is, it looks like the face, I'm sorry, not the mouth, but the face is a little bit more rounded. Do we have subdivs here? We do, I believe. Let's try to reconstruct some of these. Poly paint is a placeholder, did all in substance afterwards. So the reason why I'm not saying don't focus on poly paint, I'm saying don't focus on texture at this point, because the underlying form, what I like to say is, think of it like a recipe, and you're following a recipe, right? You have step 1, 2, 3, but if you mess up step 1, no amount of perfection in step 2 and step 3 is going to help fix step 1. Just because the underlying form isn't correct, therefore the future things that you do on top, like if you're baking a cake and it calls for 2 eggs and instead you put in 10 eggs, and you start moving on to step 2 and you're like, oh, I baked my cake and now time to put icing on it. Well, no amount of decorating and icing that you put on your cake is going to help the fact that you used 5 times too many eggs. Then I think you get the analogy. So we really want to take some time to make sure that our modeling is well done underneath here before we get into texturing. That was the analogy, if someone was maybe left a little bit behind there. So I think the face is probably a little bit more rounded here in the chin area, just based on some of the form that I'm seeing. And I think the lips here, these lips are huge. Is this like, you said stock photo? It almost looks, it's either a digital painting or it's just retouched quite a bit in like Photoshop or something like that. But yes, the shape of our lips is another area where we want to focus on those really simple shapes. Like I pointed out in the hat, we had a straight into a curve. That's also something that we want to focus on here in our lips. So we have this really strong arch of this cupid bow type shape. The mouth is also open. There are a few ways that you can go about doing that. More than a few ways, actually. Excuse me. I like to split my lower jaw, and that sometimes helps me be able to get in there and sculpt a mouth bag. I'm going to open up my door because it's getting a little cozy in here. Take off this sweatshirt. But the mouth is just parted a little bit, so I would say that's something that we definitely want to get in there. So that would probably be the first thing that I focus on. But other than that, I think the shape of your lips is just off by a little bit. It's really not too far, but a little bit is enough, often enough, to cause it to not look like what you're trying to recreate in 3D. So try to focus on those really simplistic shapes. There's also some asymmetry here, as there are in most faces. You know, there's like, it looks like that's kind of the middle part of the face, or the head is like tilted a little bit. It's a little hard for me to tell here. There's definitely some asymmetry stuff going on here that you can focus on once you get the underlying form down a little bit better. From the profile, remember we are 3D artists, so we have to focus on making this stuff look good. This is a shape that I continually see in lips that we don't want to do. We got this like really strong dip and curve in right here. Take a picture of your own face, your own lips. Unless you're like, you know, duck facing it, you're typically not going to have that amount of a dip in or curve there. So make sure that your silhouette's reading really well. Same thing kind of down here on your lower lip, which it looks like you've done a better job on for sure, but make sure that we take some time to clean up some of that. Maybe some unnecessary form, casting some unnecessary shadows here that we'd probably want to clean up a little bit. This in general, right here, I'll give a few notes on the eyes and kind of this area in general up here, but this feels it feels like this got like smushed in somehow, so I'd maybe take a step back and look at that, because remember that all the shapes in the face are working together. So lips, nose, eyes, ears, all of these things are kind of blending together, especially in the lips, nose, chin, and up to the like plane of the cheek there. All this stuff is kind of interacting together and playing off of the shape of one another. So I would take some time to try to clean up this area, fill in some of this volume where it starts to like get a really strong concavity in there, and I really do think that that will help you with that dip in shape that you had around your lips. And I think with just like a few strokes here, this is already starting to head in a little bit of a better direction. Remember that for our nose, we don't have kind of this really strong separation of form here. I also see this a lot. So I would just focus on, transitioning the shape of your nose into your actual face just a little bit better. I like to use the pinch brush, holding the Alt key for something like this. It's really nice for like transitioning tight areas. But make sure you're looking at references, try to find a face from a profile that's maybe similar to this face, and gather as much information from the front view as you possibly can here to just start, filling in some of this and cleaning it up. Also, the nostrils feel a little big. Nose feels a little big in general. Let's see. If we draw a line up from the lip here to that point in the nose, so that's where we want that to hit, so maybe pull that nose in just a little bit more, and then also pull in that upper inner corner so that the shape of the nose is reading a little bit more appealingly and more accurately to what we would see in real life. Like the analogy, and I like cake. Nice. The makeup is overdone artistically, of course. That's fine, but it still looks bad. So that would be my main take there. It's okay to make it overdone, but it's not appealing. The skin tone that we have, if we use kind of a actual painterly material, feels very pale, and on the basic material, it feels very dead. So I think some color correcting here, and again, working on the underlying form first before moving on to the poly paint would be your best bet. Because right now, it feels a little creepy. It feels like more of something that would be in a horror film. It feels vampiric, Nosferatu-ish. That is the immediate read, or the initial read that I get from something like that. As we flow up through the nose here, pay special attention to the bridge of your nose. I'll give just a few notes on kind of this area of the face as well. It feels, when you have a straight kind of plane to the nose, I don't even have that, but very kind of like brutish, square, blocky head dudes often will have a little bit more of a flat plane to the nose there. Women often do not. So really focus on that silhouette of the nose. Make sure that your brow isn't feeling very heavy and strong through there, and really just like nudging that back in just like one brush stroke makes that already start to lean a little bit more into a more appealing nature, and also anatomically correct. Same with the brow. Just be careful that your brow and the shapes leading into your eyes are feeling okay. I feel like the eyes and eyelids are maybe a little bit too far forward. It's kind of hard for me to tell without reference, but I would focus on that area a little bit more. Eyes are tough. Eyes take a long time, so make sure you spend the appropriate amount of time there. Ears. The shape of your ear simply isn't correct, and the plane of the ear at its most basic form isn't facing the right way. So maybe look at a couple images of some ears. For example, I have an insert ear mesh brush that I use quite often because I get tired of sculpting ears. So this is available on my Gumroad somewhere. I think it's actually in my main brushes here, yes. So you can get this brush. The insert ear brush has a realistic ear and a stylized ear as well, a more tuned style ear. So look at some references for some ears. Make sure that you're getting the planes for those down correctly. Maybe you could use something like this as a base and then continue on from there. In general, I would say, anatomically we're not correct here, but we also want to get a little bit more towards an appealing shape, something a little bit smaller, more feminine, and just kind of flowing in the correct direction. Right now, they're kind of flipped out a little bit too much. But those few things in here, including, like I said, getting that gap in the mouth, paying special attention to the shape of your lips, looking at the profile. There's a lot here that I think that you can push on if you would like to take this to the next level. Andra, what is going on, my dude? How you doing, man? Love your content. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. It's very nice of you. The Babu. Haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? How good are you with realism? I have, I think, one realistic piece here on my art station. I have some pilots that I did a little over a year ago. I'm responsible for sculpting everything for the middle pilot here. He's in T9, yeah, T9 F14 pilot. And then I'm responsible for sculpting everything on, what's his name? DB Cooper over here. And then the three of these, this is done by a dude I used to work with named Blake. And this is by a dude I used to work with whose name is Chris. And I can't remember who did this one. I think we might have all had a small hand in that one. I really don't remember. It's been a while. But yeah. Beckert says I sent you an ArtStation link with the finished work. So here is the finished work by Danny. I think there is still, there's definitely some stuff. I think it still has all the same issues that I mentioned here. And I'm not pointing this out to, crap on your work, and I hope that you don't feel that I'm doing that. The objective of a critique is to leave your emotions at the door, obviously, and try to improve. That's the whole reason we're doing this, and that's why I'm, taking my time to do this today for you guys. So hopefully it has been helpful. Hopefully we've gotten some good information. Everybody check out some more work by Danny, though. The glabella protrudes quite a bit. Yes, thank you. So helpful. Awesome. Thanks, Folly. No problem, Zofo. Did say I'll buy the brushes, and I will, just waiting on that paycheck. Well, no rush. Hopefully they can help you out. Could you go over some eye tips? It's a confusing area for me, asks the Babu. And Beckert says, you don't even know how helpful. Awesome. Well, I'm very glad that it has been helpful. Yes, Babu, I can go over some eye tips. It's actually something that I go over all the time. I actually have, this is a base mesh that's also available on my Gumroad. I have it loaded in my light box. Our ZBrush scene is getting heavier and heavier. So this is just a generic stylized female character that I've created, just as an example of some good eyes that I try to create, blah 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 words. A lot of this is also applicable to realistic eyes. I'm not going to take the time to go through sculpting the entire thing. I've gone over this kind of stuff a lot on my stream, and it should be available also in a lot of the videos on my YouTube channel. And I can maybe link you a specific one, or if somebody offhandedly can grab one for me, that would be awesome. But some of the things that I like to keep in mind when you're creating eyelids and eyes in general, keep in mind, the first thing you should keep in mind is that, like I mentioned with the last sculpt, everything is working in conjunction with the face. So the area around your eyes, your eye socket, your brow, your nose, your lips, your cheek, all of this stuff is working together to create these different forms. It's a lot. So that's why I always take time in those early stages blocking things out and making sure that I have a really solid base before I move forward and start working on some of these secondary and tertiary forms. So after you get to that point where you have a really good base, I typically insert using my cube tube brush, which is in my curved brushes on my Gumroad. I use that to create eyelids and eyelashes. I've shown this off many times, so I, will do a very quick demonstration. Cube tube brush, it's essentially a very simple, let me make sure, no subdivs, awesome. It's a very simple brush that inserts a tube of geometry that is geometrically very nice because it's very easy to work with. From there, after I insert that around the shape of the eyelid that I want, that looks very creepy. But after I do that, I then shape it up into the shape that I want. And a few things that I keep in mind while I do that for my eyelids. The first thing I keep in mind is making sure that the plane of this eyelid here, that flat plane, is pointing in towards the center of my eyeball. And then the other thing that I really try to focus on and pay attention to is eyelid order. Eyelid order is essentially, if you were to draw a flat plane here and bring that in towards your mesh, the first thing that should hit on your eye is that top eyelid, the bottom eyelid, the inner corner, and then the outer corner. This is obviously more stylized, so there's a lot more drastic depth and stuff going on here. But this is also applicable for real eyes as well. It's definitely something that you want to look for, even that planar point of the eyelid. But yeah, in general, that's some of the stuff that I like to keep in mind. I don't think I'll go, again, into like the whole spiel and all the... I'm not going to sit here and like sculpt up something from scratch. That would take much too long, especially since we're doing live critique today. But I think that amount of information at least falls into kind of the critique-y type stuff that we're looking at today. And we have one link, possibly, to just my YouTube channel. I think, oh, actually, thank you for sharing that, Danny. In the, here. Typically we're just working on, shush, shut up. Shut up, old me. To like scrub through really quick. I hope I get copyright striked for my own video. Yeah, so there's the basic idea of inserting those cube tubes. Eventually, just shaping them up, and I think I eventually, dynamesh them in. I'm working on other parts of the face, of course. But we eventually get there. I would check out this one. I will copy and share the link here in chat for you guys. If you guys want some more eye tips. Cool. Cool. The eyelid order thing was unknown to me. Yeah, it helps your eyes just look more natural in general. Good tip. Awesome. Applies to the lips as well. Yeah, so front, you want that top lip pretty much always to hit before that bottom lip. Okie dokie. I believe this is a head by Alexander. I think we had Alexander on the live critique last week, or maybe the one before that. But let's go ahead and download our next model. Alexander says, "Hi, I tried to make a stylized version of Henry Cavill," who I don't believe that I know off the top of my head. Maybe if I saw them. Oh, Superboy. So Alexander tried to make a stylized version of Henry here. Let's try to find a face. Such a sharp jaw. Jeez. All right. Before we do that, oh, you know what? Nah, screw it. Let's see how big we can get this. Let's see how many Z-tools and ZBrush files we can get in here. And let me, I did download that. Where did that go? There it is. Awesome. All right, so we have an attempt at a stylized version of Henry Cavill, Superman. Let's see what we got going on here. Let's take a look. Superman, Superboy. Superboy. Boy. We got a Superboy. Alright. So, I think I will just save this image real quick. And then we can import that into ZBrush and use that as a reference. How many things can we put in one ZBrush scene until it breaks? Turns out a lot. Alright, let me scale that up. A little bit low res, but that's alright. Alright, so we're trying to aim for a stylized version of Henry here. Stylization is a kind of blanket term to mean non-realism. I think the direction that you've gone here on the stylization, the appeal of this, I think you could push it a lot further. I think this is kind of floating too vaguely in between a stylized character and realism, and it doesn't really feel like you've solidified on one direction or not. I used to do this a lot when I would sculpt characters. I would, maybe try to start going for realism, and then like halfway through it, I'd be like, you know what? No, this is just a stylized character now because this sucks, and I'm just gonna push this towards the other way. And I would often float in that kind of middle area a little bit too much. So I think there are some good shapes going on in here. Let's see. What do I want to do with Superboy here? Alexander, from what I can tell, you've taken a lot of the advice that I gave on the last couple of heads that we critiqued, which is fantastic. Always love to see that. Let's push this a little bit. I'm just going to sculpt on this for a while, try to find some things that annoy me, and try to do a little bit of cleanup where I can. And I'll talk about... Why can't I? What you got here? Smooth UVs. Not sure why you have that checked. Maybe on accident. We do have some subdivisions here. That's awesome. Alright, that makes this a little bit easier. For our eyes, we got the point sphere. Good job, man. Alright. There's definitely a lot of work that can happen in the eyes to push these towards a more stylized version of this character. This brow is so very heavy. If you're going to do something like this, I would make sure that you make this feel intentional. It doesn't feel super intentional to me, so I think I'm just going to play with this a little bit, and yeah, we'll see what we can do. I think the mouth is maybe a little bit flat, and the shape of the lips here aren't exactly matching what I'm seeing. It's fine if you want to push that a little bit more. But yeah, I would say make sure that from that profile view, you're bringing that in. And because this is something that's stylized, think of like, if you've ever seen caricature art before, they try to find things about a person. I'm not sure what you're using, what image you're using as a reference. Maybe he's like scowling in it. But I'm going to try to find the things in this image that really stand out to me and exaggerate some of those things. One thing that really stands out to me is how tight of a transition he has coming from this cheekbone down to the corner of his chin down here. And he gets like this really sharp, tight line through there. So if I'm going to make a stylized version of Henry, I think it was, right? Henry here, I'm probably going to try exaggerating some of this stuff a little bit more. So let's go through and try to find some different areas where we can exaggerate some of the shapes in the face. I also think that there's probably some proportional changes we could make, but we won't focus on that too much. His mouth definitely feels a little bit more flat to me. Mouth also feels a little bit too low, just kind of proportionally for anything. It starts to feel really like, almost like it's the character's frowning, even if the mouth is in a smile, if that mouth is a little bit too low. Where's the butt chin? There you go. You could also exaggerate that and start to sculpt in the Superman butt chin. I don't know if, it looks like maybe he's got a little bit of a dimple in there. That's something that you could maybe focus on a little bit. In general, I would say if we're kind of pushing towards stylization, what I like to see in my characters is, you know, intentional shapes. Whereas in more realism, you can be a little bit more messy with your skin texture. In something like stylization, we expect hyper clean form, and we expect intentional choices with our shapes. So let's focus on some of that here. I'm just gonna go around, continue pinching up, transitioning shapes that I'm seeing. Let's see. Actually, I'll try to exaggerate a little bit more of what you got going on here. If we are going to be exaggerating anything. Turnip Key, thank you for the follow, and welcome to the stream. We mentioned, I think in our last critique of your head, Alexander, that the transition between the brow and the forehead is an area where we often don't want to see like a super tight transition there. Maybe in the stylization that you're aiming for, something a little bit more cartoony, you could exaggerate that a bit more, but still felt a little bit too awkward to me, so I would probably continue to sharpen this up. Remember that like the key difference and some of the key major features between masculine and feminine faces in realism and in stylization is that masculine or male heads are typically sharper. They have a lot tighter form. So that's probably that's one of the things that I'm trying to focus on here, and probably one of the things that makes this not feel like it's far enough towards the stylization point of that seesaw that we were talking about earlier. Like stuff like down here, if you're gonna do like a rounded chin, just like get that shape in there nice and clean. If you're not, really push that the other direction. Don't leave any room for questions. And you got a nice poly group between the upper and lower mouth. I love it. This is great. This is exactly what I like to sculpt on. So I appreciate that a lot. Let's clean up that lip just a tad. Let's see here. From the profile, I think I'm going to exaggerate. Let's see. Some of that. just that connection point. You know what, more so than anything else, I think this plane is just kind of bugging me a little bit too much. Feels a little bit like it's hitting here and then dropping straight down, so I'm trying to slowly work on pushing that back, just using my move brush. Can kind of mask off half of that, and then just like slide it in a little bit more. So from the profile, that starts to feel a little bit better to me. For the nose, I don't know. I don't really like this nose too much, just because it doesn't feel anatomically correct, even for something that's stylized, being so flat on the bottom. Normally from the profile, you can at least see the bridge of the nose. There's a little bit of a plane change between that bridge and that upper wing of the nose. I don't know how well you guys can see my nose on stream. It's pretty big, so maybe pretty well. I don't know. But again, just kind of going around, creasing up some form, making sure that nothing is left to question as, is this on purpose? So be thinking about that kind of stuff. Again, you don't really have a reference here in terms of your stylization that you're aiming for, but this is kind of the direction that I might take something like this. And then in terms of the eyelids around here, I think this crease is a bad idea. Makes the eyelid feel, eyes feel a lot heavier. If you do want to push that direction, I think that's fine, but I would try to work on first. Let's just get some more volume under these eyelids. Yeah, these eyes just actually need quite a bit of work in general. Hopefully you saw the thing that we just covered about eyelid order and all that. But yeah, other than that, I think your head looks pretty good. There's not really a ton that I would change without knowing the direction that you're heading in. I can only really give kind of general advice of what I think I would do for something like this. But hopefully some of that was helpful. I don't know if it was, but hopefully it will push you further in the direction of some nice stylized characters. Again, I think the main kind of thing that offends me here is the eyes. I would try to make these eyes actually a little bit larger. Try going for like 50% or even 100% larger eyes and see if you can really push on that stylization. Try to find, what would be cool is if you took Henry here and tried to use him and his face shapes as a reference for pointing him in more of like a classic kind of cartoon style of the soupy boy. So yeah, I don't know. I think that would be a cool idea. That would maybe give you a more specific direction in terms of where you're headed. And yeah, let me know. Let me know what you end up doing. Again, hopefully that was helpful, and we can move on to the next critique here. Labassi, how are you doing? So many good tips. This is so helpful. Awesome. Love the face planes. They make me happy. Yeah, they make me happy too. They're a lot of fun to play with. If we want to undo, so we can see we did, what, 250 quick strokes on the face there. So just to kind of start pushing that from there to where it is now. So yeah, cool. Thank you, Ben, and thanks everyone for sharing. Awesome. Glad we were of some help today. Do I want to share some good facial plane references? I'm sure you can find some really good references just with a quick Google image search. There's that really popular image that has like a front, side, and three-quarter view of a female planed out face. I think that's a pretty good reference. That's if I'm looking for like a planar facial reference. That's what I used to look at. Anymore, I just kind of know what I like to create and just kind of focus on the main shapes of the face and try to create some separation points between those. But yeah. I think our next critique here, let's see how we're doing on time. Depending on how long this next one takes, this might be our last one. But let's go ahead and move on to a critique or a model sent in by Nico. Nico says, no reference was used, just wanted to know how anatomy can be improved. I would say, especially if you're working on anatomy, Nico, and everybody else, always, always, always use reference. Your work will always, always, always be better for it. Let me create a new folder for you, Nico, and I can download your sculpt. What was it called? Oh, we got an OBJ here. Alright, so for our OBJ, we'll have to import over top of something else here, which is fine. We'll just import over this sphere. Import. Alright. So, this looks like it was actually sculpted in Blender, just because of the tessellation. I'm going to go ahead and take a stab in the dark and say that you sculpted this in Blender. Let's go ahead and split off our mesh into some different parts so that we can work on this a little bit easier. What I do like about this that you have done very well is that you have kept this, why can't I select you? You've kept this low poly enough to be in a point where we can focus on just the major shapes. So not having a reference is the main thing that's not going to allow me to critique this very well, because if you're aiming for a specific goal, which is always really important, then we can help you get towards that goal a little bit better. Where's our eyeballs here? Grab some balls, and I'll just turn off the rest of that. Okay, so anatomically, there are a lot of things that you want to aim for when you're creating a male face. Some of those things typically are a lot larger and stronger, sharper features, much like what we looked at with this character, right? A lot of that tends to be the ideal face, but there are a ton of variations on people, right? So with that said, this doesn't feel. I think the shapes here and the stuff that the direction that you've chosen to go here is absolutely fine. Anatomically, though, it is not accurate still to what we would want to see. This feels more like a stylized character head and less like something that would be considered anatomically accurate. So I think grabbing some reference would really help you. Some of the places where this starts to break down, if we look at the 3/4 view, the shape of the skull here starts to slide back really fast. So what I would recommend doing, if other than, obviously grabbing some reference, make sure that you're looking at this from some really extreme angles, whatever that may be, top down, bottom up. Make sure you're working with perspective on. I don't know how that works in Blender, to be honest. I've never played with their sculpting tools. Make sure that you're also working from orthographic views and really paying attention to your silhouette. Your eye here feels like it's shooting forward way too much, so I would work on pulling back the cavity of the eye a little bit, and obviously the eyeball as well. Typically in the silhouette here, what I like to see is a little bit of a hit coming down from that bottom eyelid, and then a wrap around on the cheekbone, a wrap around on the lips, and a line flowing out the jawline there. So that's what I tend to look for the internal silhouette here, but because this is so far forward, it doesn't really allow us to get that nice wrap in there. So that's another thing that I would look at. I think you have some of the same problems that one of the heads we were looking at earlier did with just not having enough form to transition here from the lip. Colors die? Sure, colors die. Thank you for the follow. I think you're lacking some of the form here that kind kind of makes this break again from that 3/4 view. If we're just looking here at the cheekbone, how this is wrapping around here, it starts to feel like they're almost making kind of a duck face again. That was kind of one of the things we were looking at earlier. And proportionally, the lips, nose, and eyes, the lips and nose feel much larger than the eyes. So I would focus on shrinking this nose down, however you're going to end up doing that, and shrinking down part of the lips. Also working on, you know, like I said, this will obviously take some time, and this is a little hard for me to sculpt on since it's like tessellated here. But working on that, pushing in the eye cavity. I'll try to just like add a few strokes on here so we can start filling in some of that information to get it heading towards a little bit more realism. Make sure that the plane change between your lips is feeling a little bit more closer to what we would see in reality. I think you actually have, in general, like the opposite problem of what we had in this head over here. Whereas we're still floating between stylization and realism. We're somewhere in this empty space here. Whereas this head was aiming a little bit more towards realism and trying to hit that stylization point. Your head is leaning a little bit more towards stylization when you're aiming for realism. So grab those references, take a gander, and yeah. I think you do have some good forms in here though. These have been sculpted pretty well, and you've done a good job of, like I said, keeping things at this kind of low resolution version. So after you do all of that, I would probably just take some time to also probably start connecting up some of these points here between like the neck, head, and ears and everything. I'll just do like a quick Dynamesh, whoops, and start flowing some of this form together through here. After you do that, I think this will be headed in a good direction, and you will nail this. I can feel it. I can feel it in my butt. Sure. Proportionally, I think there's just a lot kind of off here that once you correct, get closer to realism, it'll feel a lot better. I study anatomy by drawing a lot. That is absolutely one way to study. You could also do some just simple draw-overs in Photoshop or something, or try to sculpt and understand that 3D form. Doing some studying of hard surface techniques. Hopefully next week you can share some of those studies. That would be awesome. Sure thing. Blender, you like it? Yeah, Blender's pretty sweet. Look cool to exaggerate the features. Thanks. Gonna improve it a lot, I hope. Yeah, hopefully we critiqued this in the right direction because you mentioned that you were going for some anatomical truths. So hopefully that's helpful. And yeah, holy crap, guys, we looked at a lot today. Let's see how many of these models did we actually look at and critique today. We got 1, 2. Thank you, by the way, everybody, for sending some stuff in. I hope that it's been helpful for you. Hope that you guys have learned a lot. And for those that are just joining us here at the end, we will be doing the same thing next Friday. So don't feel bad. Ooh, that's fun. We got all that nice sculptural form in there. Here, we can turn all that junk back on. We'll be doing the same thing next Friday at noon EST. And yeah, if you guys want to get your stuff in, shoot an email to follygon@gmail.com. Type in !critique in chat if you guys want to get in on that. What else? If I didn't get to your thing today, you'll be moved to the front of the list for the next stream. So no problem there, no worries, guys. Yeah, cool. We got a lot here. How many do we got? 2, 4, 6, 8 models. 8, 9, 10. 10 different. Holy crap, guys. We got a lot today. Like I said, hopefully this has been helpful for you, even if I didn't specifically critique your stuff. I will again, at the end here, shout out my Gumroad, which I would appreciate if you guys checked out. It's just gumroad.com/Follygon. There are links to all my stuff down below. I got a nice bright light right in my eye. I'll mention on here, I got some tutorial courses for absolute beginners, more intermediate and advanced users as well. I have some brushes, base meshes, all sorts of stuff on here. I don't pay anything to advertise, so the only way that people hear about it is right here on stream or through the good word of mouth of you people, which I always appreciate. Other than that, thank you again for coming by. Holy crap, this was a lot. And I'm sure next Friday we'll have some more good stuff to look at. But you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on Monday. Next stream will be on Monday at noon EST. And just to make sure we don't have any last-minute questions before we bounce a Rooney. Thanks so much for the feedback. No problem, Arochima. No problem at all. Beckert, Louis, Labasi, Ventiox, SLA, everybody. Babu, thank you so much for coming and hanging out, guys. All right, see y'all. Have a great rest of your day.